Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's that time again. It's Seniors Matter. I'm Brenda Charles Edwards, the host of Seniors Matter. We're here every Friday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on www.rainieravenueradio.world, your South Seattle community radio station. You can also listen to us on YouTube, Facebook, and of course on the Rainier Avenue Radio app. We feature interviews with people that provide services or have valuable information for seniors, their families, and of course, the community. Do you need financial documents notarized? Are you a person that needs documents read to you for clarity or completion? And if you're in the hospital or assisted living, just give me a call. You can reach me at Black Orchid Notary 206-683-2636. Couple of announcements. The Call to Conscious Black History Month Museum opens here at the Columbia City Theater starting next Monday on February 14th, on Thursdays and Fridays from 3 to 7, and Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Go to calltoconscious.world for tickets. Also, want to make more community broadcasts like this one possible? Donate right now on Venmo at Rainier Avenue Radio or online at rainieravenueradio.world/donate through ShunPike. Well, my guest today is the one and only John Yasutake, who is host of Seattle Here and Now on rainieravenueradio.world. I'm sure some of you are familiar with him, as John is a local person. But anyway, John, welcome to the show. We can get into all this other stuff later.
Welcome, as always. As a guest, I'm outstanding, and you as a host are mediocre, but that's okay. We won't get into that one. That award-winning show, Seattle Here and Now on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, live every Thursday, 6 to 7. Hey, tune in. We got a lot of stuff going on. Anyways, no, it's my pleasure to be here, Brenda, because when we talked earlier about what would be our discussion piece and discussion point, I ran across an article that just blew me away, and I think I shared that with you when we were talking about, and the subject matter today, and I'll just mention it, grandparenting. But I'm a grandparent. You're quasi-grandparent. Let's open the lid to that, because I'm not aware of the issues that are tied to being grandparents these days. But it was also based on our experience with our granddaughter. So, I mean, thank you very much for opening the subject and inviting me. I appreciate it. And as always, I'm always glad to be a guest on your show. And, it's, as I say, it's the least I can do to support a colleague and who's an up and comer who's trying to.
All right, John, enough.
Okay, let it go.
Enough.
All right. But it's a serious subject, so please, Brenda, take it away.
Right, and we were saying, John, it's the hidden epidemic. Yeah. Grandparents raising grandchildren. And we're going to talk about the challenges that are faced by grandparents who had to step up to care for their grandkids. John, how many kids in the U.S. are being raised by their grandparents or other kin?
At least it's reported at least 2.4 million. That was as of a couple of years ago. So, and you know how things go when you do reporting. We know that that's probably an undercount, because between you and I know families in this community who are grandparents raising grandchildren. And the thing about that is that I've been reading is that oftentimes when the grandparents take the children, guess what happened to the parents? The biological parents, they disappear.
Right.
So it's almost like the grandparents are left holding the bag. And I don't mean to say that in a pejorative way.
No, I know what you're saying.
The social, emotional, and financial support falls on the shoulders of the grandparents. It happened to us. And I don't want to get into any of the gory details, but basically, you're taking care of another child. It's like you're revisiting being a
A parent.
parenthood. But two, at least 2.4 million,
Mm-hmm.
and
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 what is
it's
the age range, John?
they go from under 6, and that's when they started counting. And so it goes like this: 2.4 million are raised by grandparents or other kin, but most significantly grandparents. At least a third of that 2.4 million are children under 6.
Mm-hmm.
Presents a real interesting scenario for older grandparents, especially. Staying up at night, all that, all that kind of stuff. Then another 33% are, at least 35% are 6 years of age up to 11. And then this is the one that's really daunting.
Mm-hmm.
When they hit that 12 to 17, that terrible teens age
Yes.
group, that's about 33%. Now, I cannot imagine. I'm 77 years old. How am I going to relate to a teenager in these days and times? First of all, I'm not technically able to deal with issues involving smartphones, uh, computers, tablets, all that stuff. I mean, it's just a whole different world. So like I said, a third of the population, at least 33%, are going to be 12 to 17. And then that other 33%, and there's that middle group, but the 33% that really would be a challenge are those under 6. So
Yeah.
this is a really, as you say, is an epidemic. It's really an issue. And then I think we talked about it too earlier on. There aren't any resources for grandparents. There are no programs to assist grandparents, many of whom, just like us, are on retirement income and or Social Security, one or the other or both. And let's be honest, to raise a child these days, in spite of the terror from that knucklehead in DC, I mean, it is expensive, and
Yeah.
that's the challenge. So, anyways, and I think it was a very appropriate point that you're making to bring this on the air, and I think it's like I said, it's going to be a challenge for
Yeah.
all of us.
Absolutely. If you're just tuning in, you're listening live to Seniors Matter with your host, Brenda Charles Edwards, on www.rainieravenueradio.world, your South Seattle community radio station. We're here on Fridays at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. Do you know what's the best legacy we can give ourselves and our loved ones? Join me on Zoom or in person for a group or individual session on legacy end of life planning. You may contact me at 206-683-2636.
Hmm.
So now, John, we know we're going to get into resources, but one of the things too that for those people that haven't had the experience yet,
Hmm.
um, as you said, grandparents usually end up assuming all the caregiving responsibilities
Hmm.
and unexpectedly and without adequate financial preparation.
Hmm.
And like you said, limited income, retirement, Social Security. But don't forget the cost for food, clothing, school
Hmm.
supplies, healthcare, childcare. And it's like, and if you're not the legal guardian, you can run into some difficulties also.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes,
And
that's
if you are still working, you could end up losing your job because you're trying to stay at home or get as much done, or you're late to work. You may get to work, but you're late to work because you had to take the child to school.
hmm
And it's like, and a lot of grandparents are raising their grandchildren without formal legal authority. And that's a
right.
tough one. And with that, you may not have the ability to consent to medical care or school enrollment,
Hmm.
health, insurance, benefits, special education services.
You're right.
And it's like, my gosh, what do they want us to do? You just can't let the child get put into foster care. That's not
Right.
helpful. So what else do we do?
Well, that's the dilemma. That's the catch 22. You cannot formalize your relationship to that grandchild and claim them as a dependent unless you get specific legal uh,
Right.
uh, permission.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, oftentimes when the parents drop their kids off to you as a grandparent, they disappear. They
Right.
may even leave the state. They may even leave the country, and that is a fact. And one of the things that came out of the studies is that it's sudden in nature, unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's an emergency. In my case, I mean, where's my grandchild? That kind of thing. And they again, grandparents are taking on these roles without any warning, without being prepared. And also the duration of care is undetermined, and oftentimes it goes on for several years. I mean,
Right.
I know families where they taken in the grandchild as a kid, and they're marching them through high school graduation. I mean, they've had them that long,
Right.
uh,
Right.
and and also the grandparent is looking at how they're going to support that child through college, because again, oftentimes the parents disappear. There is no resource. So it's a real, I mean, it puts as they say, a long time burden, and it's a burden that you're placing on caregiving grandparents.
Well,
The issue, yeah, like you raised the issue, medical care and all that kind of stuff. These are not dependents. So they may not be able to get the kind of, care that would come under a medical plan. Unless they're identified as a dependent, that kind of thing. So, anyways, you were I didn't mean to cut you off
no,
there.
no, no, that's okay. I was just thinking about my own personal experience where my aunt was taking care of my third cousin,
Mm,
the lineage. And she was 1 years old at the time, and my
mm,
my aunt was 79,
wow.
and she had medical issues.
Hmm.
And I deal with end of life planning.
Right.
And so her and I had this conversation, and she said, "Well, if I should die, would you take her?"
Mm,
And I said, well, yeah." Because she
hmm.
was my favorite aunt. So I just like, okay. One of my favorite aunts, in case somebody is listening from the family. Yeah.
Good
But
move. Hmm.
but the thing is, because of her age, she has a younger sister, and they wouldn't the system wouldn't let her take the younger sister because they said she was too old, but she was
Hmm.
okay to take the older one, mind you, which
Hmm.
was fine in a way, but she did get placed in foster care.
Hmm.
And the one nice thing about it, that we connected with the foster family, and they wanted the girls to know each other, so we did things together, and had birthday parties and all that type of thing. But estate planning, guardianship, succession, and financial protections are not, people aren't always made aware of that. The grandparents
Hmm.
are having to, do all of this. But it's something that you do need to keep in mind, because
Hmm.
you're older, anything can happen to any of us. But when you're older, you can have a disability, and you can even
Right.
have death while caregiving. Now, what happens to the child?
Hmm.
That isn't something that's really addressed and make it easy for grandparents to get legal custody, or at least have something that says, in case of death, this
Right.
child can go, with another relative.
Yeah. And that, well, again, here we go. What would be the living arrangements if something would happen to that grandparent who is the caregiver of that child, and something should happen to them? They get severely ill, or pass away. What happens to that grandchild who's been living with that grandparent? Because again, oftentimes the biological parents are gone;
Right.
they're not available. And let's be honest, grandparents are soft touches. I mean, there may be aunts and uncles out there and cousins, but it's oftentimes the parents of the mother or the father of that child
Mm-hmm.
who are saddled with that responsibility. And
Right.
again, limited income, issues of health, and being just older. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 77 years old.
But you're
I
not that
have
old.
no, it, well, I have no idea what the tenor of music is and who's rapping and who's
Mm.
hip hopping, and I don't even know who K-pop is, and that's Korean. I have not a clue. I would have to watch it on TV. It's barely that I even know who Snoop Dogg is and all these guys and Kool Moe Dee and all that stuff. I mean, seriously, it's a different world,
Yeah, it is. I
and that
agree.
would be difficult again for me at my age to take on a child who's even older than 6 years old, who's
Mm.
a teenager or going into teen years. The manifestation of all kinds of issues comes about, and to be honest, hey, I've lived my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm phasing out. I don't know if I have the energy to take on another responsibility, and that's unfortunate. And oftentimes there's an issue of abuse there too,
Yes.
from the grandparents to the grandchild, and also vice versa.
Right. Yes. Don't forget that part.
Yes, we know that. So it is really daunting. 2.4 million as reported as of 2 or 3 years ago. It's got to be knowing the economic straits and everything, people getting laid, all this thing going on. It's got to be bigger than that. But anyways, that's my comments on that. So
So, just to let our audience know, there is some resource. It's not heavy, but I just want to call out that there's 211, and that's for a tailored referral to programs in your area. You can visit national hubs such as grandfamilies.org or Generations United for tools and state program links.
mhm.
And then, of course, you can contact the State Kinship Navigator Program for one on one support.
Mhm.
But it's still tough,
Right.
because even you say you're 77, but I know that you have other outside activities that you do too.
Mhm.
You're not just sitting at home,
Right.
and you have projects and things to do, and so now you've got to work on incorporating your lifestyle with a child's lifestyle,
Mhm.
making sure they're getting to school on time. If they have any problems, make sure you're attending the meetings for them. And I mean, this can be very rewarding, but it's just tough, and I think that grandparents need to have more accessibility to
Mhm.
funds. That's probably the biggest thing right there.
Right. No, you're right. And like I said, it is a daunting task, taking on another life. When you've already done that, you've already raised your children. They're gone. They're doing their thing, and all of a sudden, you're on the horizon comes another child.
They forgot
And
about that aspect. They're supposed to raise them now, their own.
yeah, like I said, the one thing we used to say, oh, it's great to have grandkids come over, but guess what? What's even better is they get to go home at the
Right.
end of the day. I mean, that kind of thing. But all kidding aside, this is an issue. It's a DSHS. We tried to work through DSHS. You have a mountain of paperwork,
Right.
authorization. We cannot. They will not allow you to take a child and make that child a dependent that would be getting food stamps or SNAP or any of that unless you can verify that child is in your bloodline. I mean, literally DNA testing, all that kind of stuff. It's incredible, and so, and rightfully so.
Right.
Because,
And and
you want to make sure that the right person gets the right services and support. And like you said, there are a few organizations out there, but there are only a handful to
mhm.
deal with this issue. And
And
so,
like even what you said about SNAP, and then there's that other one, the temporary assistance for
right,
needy families. You still got to go through a bunch of hoops to
right,
get qualified, and then the route I ended up taking was I adopted her.
uh huh,
So I would have full custody and not have to deal with any of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I looked into it all, I said, "Wow, this is a lot, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of support."
Right.
So I was, trying to look forward towards the future for her and see how she would be taken care of if something happened to me or my husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, think of it this way. I'm retired. My wife is retired. We decided to move out of our home because it takes maintenance. We go to a assisted living place, or so not assisted, but one of those adult senior
Mhm.
living places, and we live in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, there's a knock on our door, and there's our grandchild there with a bag full of clothes, and now that grandchild lives with us. We are in a 1-bedroom apartment,
Yes.
and we're saying, and I can look at that and say to myself, "Holy heck! What in the heck are we going to do now? Who's going to sleep on the couch? Who's going to sleep on? I mean, all of that.
Mhm.
I mean, and let's be honest. You get to that point in your age where you get kind of selfish because you've sacrificed and you've done all these things all these years, and you just want to be able to kick back. And then all of a sudden, hold it, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. The kids getting ready to go to school. You got to get breakfast. What?
Mhm.
Hey, and then pack a lunch if you don't buy lunch at school. Then when the child comes home, I mean, and then what about homework? Oh my gosh.
You got to learn how to do the math.
Thank you. Again, and I have to hand it to those grandparents
Mhm.
that are doing these wonderful things. More power to you. God bless you. Hey, because you're helping out. And again, we're talking about a millions of kids that are involved. So
Right.
and thank you too for adopting a young child, because that's the only way they're going to make it. Let's be honest. Somebody has to interrupt the flow to make it work. We can't just cast our children aside. Our
And
grand
we need to make the resources and the information more
Right.
readily available, because a lot of grandparents don't know what they
Hmm.
can get, where to start, what to do.
Hmm.
And it's tough on both parties,
Right.
because the child is, the innocent child is being thrown out
Hmm.
into the wilderness, the wolves, whatever,
Through
and
no fault of their own. Through no fault of their own.
through no fault of their own. Absolutely.
Mm, that is
So,
interesting. So, yeah, it is an issue. I think we're going to continue to see more about this. And I was, like I said, I was shocked
yeah,
when you
that,
and I talked about a subject, and I just happened to run across that article, and I said, "Let me read it." I said, "Oh my gosh,
yes.
oh my gosh!" So those of you out there listening and watching, hey, we do have an issue for our own communities and the welfare of these children. That's the other thing.
Hmm.
Think of the welfare of the child. And yeah, it places a burden on grandparents, blah, blah, blah. So that means if they're going to take on that burden, we need to be able to support them and assist them. More
Right.
programs to assist these grandparents who are now going to be parents. Yeah,
Absolutely. And the
yeah,
child deserves that. I mean,
yeah.
you and I were both privileged. Well, I shouldn't say privileged, but we had parents that loved us and took care
Hmm.
of us. And that's what we try to give back when we get married
Right.
or decide to have children. You want to make it a little bit better for them, but you don't want to make it any less than what you had growing up. That's my
Exactly.
feeling.
Right.
So, and it's tough for a lot of parents because they can't do that. There's probably more drugs out here now than it was when we were first growing up,
Hmm.
and that doesn't help any either.
Right.
And then if a parent is using drugs and then the mother gets pregnant, they pass that on to their child.
Right.
And if you're alcoholic, it's just really tough, and it's not fair for an unborn child either.
Right.
So, you know, I guess all I can really say on it as our time is drawing near is that please, please, please contact your resources. Call the state, call, I gave you a couple places to call and just see what support you can get and try to get as much as you can. And if you need any documents notarized, let me know. 206-683-2636 because I am a mobile notary and I'd be more than happy to help you out.
Yep. And there is that legal requirement.
Yes.
As a well-intentioned grandparent, if you want to take care of it and do it the correct way, you're going to have some legal requirements that are going to have to be met. So thank you for that, Brenda. And like I said, for those of you listening and watching, more power to you. You are fulfilling a role that unfortunately your child is not doing for your grandchild. And you're taking on that mantle. And again, more power to you. And, hopefully things will work out. So, and like I said, I'm really glad we were able to talk about this subject because I had no idea.
I know, me either.
I know it's shocking to me.
It was very shocking. Yeah.
So, but thank you, Brenda, for bringing this on the air.
And thank you, John, for coming on the air.
Oh, of course. And as I say, tune in on air every Thursday live, 6 to 7, on that award-winning show, Seattle Here and Now, on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Okay, enough of my plug.
Yes,
thank you,
I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much to my listening, viewing audience, and of course, my guest, Mr. John Yasutake. A special thanks to MC Class for the use of his music, Ragtime. Have a great weekend. Go Hawks. Be safe. And live your life like it's golden. Thanks, John.